You should be all set.
Great, thank you so much. Welcome and good morning. We are the Energy, Utilities and Technology Committee. A couple members still joining us. My name is Seth Berry. I'm the House Chair. We are here today for two presentations, one from the Public Utilities Commission to give us a report on a statewide multiple use online energy data platform, and another from the Efficiency Maine Trust regarding the Agricultural Fair Assistance Program. And again, my name is Seth Berry. I represent House District 55, which is Bowdoin, Bodenham, most of Richmond, and beautiful Swan Island on the Kennebec. We have with us, just joining, our Senate Chair, Senator Lawrence. Are you able to introduce yourself? And it looks like
I think so, if I unmute.
There we go.
So I'm State Senator Mark Lawrence. I'm the Senate co-chair of the committee. I represent Southern York County.
Thank you. We'll go to Senator Vitelli next.
Good morning. I'm Eloise Vitelli. I represent Senate District 23, which is all of Saginaw County, including the beautiful island of Swans Island, and the town of Dresden in Lincoln County. Happy to be here this morning.
Great. Representative Foster.
Good morning. I'm Steve Foster, representing District 104. Includes the towns of Dexter, Garland, Charleston, Exeter, and Stetson.
Representative Sachs.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melanie Sachs. I represent House District 48, which is Freeport and part of Pownell. Thank you.
Representative Ziegler.
Good morning. I'm Representative Paige Ziegler. I represent District 96 in Waldo County, the 7 towns of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Mount Fillmore, Claremont, Searsmont.
Representative Kessler.
Good morning. I am Chris Kessler, representing part of South Portland and a little smidgen of Cape Elizabeth.
And Representative Grahowski.
Good morning, everyone. Nicole Grahowski. I represent House District 132, City of Ellsworth, Town of Trenton. And I think someday we ought to try to introduce each other and see if we can name everyone's communities.
Excellent idea, but I was hoping to make that a surprise task.
Oh,
so
sorry.
let the cat out of the bag. Great. And as always, we have with us our committee analyst, Lindsay Laxon, and our committee clerk, Jason Allerding, who make it look like we know what we're doing. Today, as I mentioned, we have two presentations, and Director Harry Lanphier of the Public Utilities Commission is with us and will be presenting the first. Director Lanphier, welcome. I don't know if you're able to turn on your video, and let us know also if you need the ability to share slides.
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
We can hear you, just not see you.
Yeah, I apologize for my lack of video. Ironically, my laptop died last night and unfixable, so getting a new one. So I've got a loaner, and
Got it.
It appears that my video is turned on, but apparently not. So, but I think I can share my screen. If I can do that, I should be all set.
Okay, let's try that, and we will just have to imagine your smiling face. It looks like screen sharing is working. We see the, oh, there we go. That's the whole screen.
Okay.
Good to go.
It's probably better you don't see my face anyway. This is a win-win. I mean that in all jokingly. So Representative Berry and Senator Lawrence and distinguished members of the committee, I'm Harry Lanphier. I'm the Administrative Director at the Public Utilities Commission. And we presented sent in a report to you on January 20th, and I'm going to go over it today very briefly. So you know all about the resolve, and we had limited time to get this done. So I will say we did the best we can. So we interviewed as many folks in this field as we possibly could to make sure that we developed a request for information that was hopefully understandable and to be consistent with the resolve as well, obviously. And in addition to that request for information, which I'll go into in more detail in a second, we did also solicit comments from as I said earlier, as many folks as we possibly could. We also created a docket in our case management system just to capture all the data, and we asked for public input as well, and we actually did get some, so that was helpful. And as I said earlier, we submitted our report on January 20th. So the RFI, which we attached to the report, I believe, or if you don't have it, we can certainly send it to you. We did get 6 responses, which I thought was great. We did try to make as many people in the industry aware that Maine was doing this. And we talked to New Hampshire and New York and a couple others, and just to try to get the word out to vendors in this world to respond to the RFI, because an RFI, as you know, has got no commitment for the state to spend any money. So sometimes vendors are busy doing other things. But I thought 6 responses was great. None of those respondees had implemented a statewide platform like we're talking about here. That didn't really surprise us. It's fairly new. I'll talk a little bit more about the technology challenges and the data exchange standards and some issues around there more in a second. But certainly the interfaces between the utilities and this platform are certainly a challenge, and every utility is going to be slightly different. So there would be costs on, obviously on the utility side and cost for the entity developing this platform. Initial costs, a wide range of costs there, 500,000 to 2 million to initial development, and then with ongoing annual costs of the 350,000 to 1.2 million. So year one, if you added those two numbers together, worst case would be 3.26 million for year one cost. Now I want to caveat all of that by saying the state purchasing rules for a request for information, you have to be very careful how you ask for cost, because again, it's no commitment on the state. So basically the wording is something like, give us costs based on your knowledge of other similar systems. So this isn't an exact bid of what these vendors would be able to build this system for. It's as close as we could get within the procurement guidelines. So so those are the cost ranges. I'll go into those in a little more detail in a second. I guess more than a second right now. So here they are, each of the 6 entities, and again, you can see a wide variety of costs there, from the startup costs and then the interface work with the utilities. And of course, in this case, in the RFI, we asked people to assume 2 electric utilities and the four gas LDCs, so those 6 entities. So those are the range of costs that I had summarized on the prior slide, and again, the details are in our report if you want more information. I wasn't going to go through these line by line. If you'd like me to, I certainly can, but that's the quick summary. And so our conclusions are, this would be a challenge for us. I would say that there are lots of things that have to be worked out and understood completely. And again, we grabbed as much information from New Hampshire and New York as we could. So there, I think this industry is still maturing in our view, based on the responses we received. Again, nobody has built something like this yet. I would say New York is probably on a path to be the closest to get this done. As I think New Hampshire testified at your committee when this legislation came forward, and admittedly, they put together a lot of the standards, a lot of the background work, and I will tell you, we leveraged every bit of that we could in our request for information, but they haven't gone forward to build anything. New York, conversely, if you read, let's see, where is it? I put a fair amount of detail about New York in our report on page 2. So it talks a lot about what they're doing, and they've got a project management entity. They've got a dedicated staff to this, and phase one of their platform, if everything stays on schedule, would be done in 2023, and phase two would be 2026. But they, as I said, they've got a project management office, a dedicated staff working on this, and that's I think what it would take to make this happen. And I guess the final bullet is important to note. Building a system like this is not in our wheelhouse for sure. It is a significant technology project. I will say that. I've got a little bit of a background in technology when I worked for Governor King, so I know enough to be dangerous. But it's a significant project, and I'm sure all of you have your own story of how large technology projects don't always end well. In fact, I've never, in my experience, seen a multi-million-dollar project come in on time and on budget. It just, these technology projects are tough, and this is new. And the vendors in their responses acknowledge that. So our recommendations, we would suggest that, let the industry mature a little bit. That would be our kind of number one suggestion. Certainly a lot of progress has been made, but again, none of the entities bid on the RFI have done this exactly. That's not to say maybe some other vendor in some other state has done it, but certainly we're not aware of it. And when we talked to New York, which is again way down the road, they told us the same thing. So, and again, we did get a lot of feedback and tried to capture that in the report, and it's not all detailed here, but there are challenges with the exchange of data. The data models are starting to come together, and those, how that works is starting to gel, I think, as kind of across the nation, but it's not quite there yet. The EPA, we did meet with them, and actually they responded, and they encouraged us to, and this is detailed in the report as well, they encouraged us to look at us being, Maine, obviously, to look at kind of the whole building, as we acknowledge, because in their view, benchmarking against other similar buildings is really a way to see how you're doing to drive, efficiency gains or getting at, renewable goals and climate goals and things like that. So that would be an important area. And again, we, after this law was passed, we didn't have a lot of time. We did the best we could, I will say that, and we worked really hard to get to where we are right now. So, but again, the final thing, just to reemphasize, I don't think the commission isn't the right entity to do this. It is again, a significant technology project. And again, it's we would suggest you wait a little bit and let the industry mature, and maybe let some other states get this done and in place, and then proceed from there. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Lanfear, and appreciate hearing about this work and a little overview of that report, which is in our inboxes. At this time, we will go to discussion, questions for Director Lanfear from the committee, and comments are welcome as well. Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Harry, and thank you all for the work that you did on this. It leads me to conclude that there's some crossover with some of the other billing and metering issues that we've been talking about in the committee. And I was wondering if you could speak to one of those recommendations in the report. So recommending to encourage enhancements to utility company systems that would incorporate the concept of a building and identifying specific meters to those buildings. I feel like we have run into that issue with like the billing with EMS and fire stations and all that. So I was wondering, can you maybe give some guidance as to how we can put those all together with something that we could maybe report out on this session?
Oh, I'll answer that as best I can. It's a great question. Let's see, we spoke to Central Maine Power and we got comments from Unitil. And the Unitil, the largest gas company in Maine, they actually had done a fair amount of work with New Hampshire, and one of their points was, challenges of providing a data in a way that, the platform would require it. So again, with that whole building view, and they just said, the more that you can coordinate with utilities, the better. So that it's certainly a challenge. And I also know one of the other things we pointed out is that it's really the utility backend systems that the platform would have to interface with, and they're all different. Now, I think CMP and Unitil both use the same kind of backend system. So you would think that it would be easier for them perhaps to integrate. It's a large, I think it's SAP. I'd have to double check on that. But we did not talk with the other 4 utilities. We just didn't have the time to get the RFI out the door and do that. But it's also a function of who the winning bidder would be. The vendor that would win this bid to build this platform, it would, also be a function of how their systems would integrate with those 6 utilities. And until you actually get there, you don't know. But if we were to go forward with this and you did a formal RFP, one of the things I would suggest to get at your question, Representative, would be to get the very specific data from those 6 utilities, exactly how their systems work. The API, the application programming interfaces is the technical term. And, the APIs for all those 6 systems, again, probably a little bit different. I'd be shocked if they weren't different. And some of those utilities, are small. So I would think in order to do a very thorough RFP to procure this, you would need to really understand the back end of those systems and then incorporate that into the RFP. And I think that would give you your best opportunity to have a vendor understand it and say, okay, now that we know that, we can bid a system that we think is going to be functional. Did that get at your question, I hope?
Yeah, I think what it makes me think about is, as to whether a statewide platform is necessary or not. I can't necessarily say that the answer is yes after this study, but I think what I do hear is that standardization is definitely a necessity, and that all of the utilities should be able to get their data into one particular format that is usable by third parties or whoever else a customer may voluntarily want to give that data to. Is that an accurate assessment in your mind?
Yeah, I would say that's fair. The green button standard that was in the legislation is something that we put into the RFI and asked vendors to kind of respond to that, and everybody's certainly moving to that standard. And I guess I would say in our view, the two more sophisticated utilities in Maine, CMP and Unitil, they're the largest, and therefore their billing systems have to be a little bit more sophisticated, are probably going to have, an easier time moving in that direction. The, Versant and the other three gas companies, Versant's large, but the other three gas companies are pretty small. So I think you're right. I think that, having, and that's one of the bullets in the presentation kind of alluded to that, urging the utilities to start to look at what these platforms would look like, so they could begin to make investments to make the integration easier, would certainly be helpful, and might help reduce the cost. Again, the bidders or the responders to the RFI did the best they could based on the data we provided. So the more detailed that data is by utility, I think is going to be helpful for the vendor community. Hopefully that helped as well.
Other questions or discussion?
May I ask more questions? Thank you.
Absolutely.
So was my bill after all?
Indeed it was. You're entitled to ask questions.
Thank you very much. So as it pertains to identifying particular types of meters and the other, problems that we've been dealing with around identifying who's who and which meters at what building, do you think, or would you say that standardization of the data, like using a green button standard, would help to accomplish that? Or is it that that type of identification needs to happen in parallel along with standardization?
I would say in parallel.
Yeah.
Because you make a good point. I couldn't say, if those 6 utilities all would definitively, with great detail, let's say, know for certain, this meter is associated with this building, and if it's a apartment building or a duplex, or there's lots of unique building structures in Maine with meters inside and outside, and I'm pretty certain, across the board, that those 6 utilities don't all know exactly, this meter belongs to this building. Again, I would say, the more sophisticated utilities probably do, but again, that would be another reason to dig into that issue in a lot of detail before you kind of proceeded. I think it would just be helpful across the board, both for the utilities and the vendor community.
Representative Kessler, any follow-up?
I do not have follow-up on that.
So Director Lanfear, I'll reserve my question. Go to Representative Grahowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just was wondering, and I don't think it was part of the task, but in any of your conversations, did you hear about anything like this happening internationally? It occurs to me that there's, a possibility that other countries or regions are moving forward with these sort of things faster than we might be here in the United States. Sort of anecdotal or anything.
Yeah, no, we did not. We really focused on other states, and in the RFI itself, we asked a lot of questions around that. Tell us about your experience with other states that you'd be willing to share, but we didn't go international.
Got it. So the state of play right now, Director Lanfear, is that this information essentially just resides with the utilities. Is that correct?
Right. Yes, and I think some of the utilities have their own portal, if you will, where you can go in and look at your individual data, and those are in various degrees of development as far as we're aware. But yeah, there's no centralized platform at this point.
Got it. And just refreshing my memory about the green button standard and efforts in this effort to move forward with energy efficiency data sharing. I am reminded that the federal government has been investing in programs to research around programs to collect and manage performance data, helping the public to access the data and support public and private sector decision making since at least 2014. I think it kind of followed on the introduction of advanced metering infrastructure that was funded by the federal government. And was part of the report, and forgive me if you mentioned it, but did you look back at the work that had been done by, for example, the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and NREL and in Colorado and others to try to advance this work?
Well, I'd have to go back and look at who responded to the RFI. I don't believe those entities did, and we did talk to the Green Button folks specifically, and we did talk to the EPA, and there's a section of the report that talks about the EPA's comments on saying, meters, it's the exact issue that Representative Kessler brought up, that, in all cases, meters may not be associated to a building in a utility database, and that becomes an issue. But the EPA in particular was talking, they're interested in their Energy Star building program, and they're encouraging Maine to proceed in that direction. But the entities you mentioned, I'm not certain.
Got it. The U.S. Department of Energy website talks about the Standard Energy Efficiency Data Platform, or SEED, SEED, and they describe it as an open source, secure enterprise data platform for managing portfolio scale building performance data from a variety of sources. And it apparently integrates with Energy Star, Green Button, and other tools to allow multiple parties to work on the same data set. And it seems pretty exciting and very relevant to this work. So I would be very interested in whether that might be a promising place to look as we consider next steps.
Yeah, it certainly could be. I think, the challenge still is whatever system you use has to integrate with these 6 utilities, and that those interfaces have to be built, or, in other words, obviously you have to have the utility data or to feed into whatever the system is going to be. And that's one of the, I think, big challenges. So I think what you're talking about is, data that a customer or organizations already have that then get fed in. If I own a chain of restaurants, I can feed my information into, there's a variety of benchmarking systems, and I could say, well, why are my Wendy's restaurants using more energy than my counterparts in wherever, Massachusetts or New Hampshire? That kind of information and systems do exist, but this is a fair amount different with the interfaces into the utilities, I believe, but I'd have to double check that.
Got it. Representative Kessler?
I'll defer if you have more questions, and I can wait. It's up to you.
Well, I guess I do, just to put a pin in that previous conversation. Director Lamphere, 10 years or so ago, we did go ahead with advanced metering infrastructure investments. I think it was 100 million from federal taxpayers and 100 million plus interest paid for by Maine ratepayers for the AMI system that CMP has. I don't remember what Versant or at that time Amera was approved for, but were there any conditions attached with respect to how those AMI systems would provide data for the public interest, or was that money just handed over with the understanding that it would only be held by the private utility monopoly?
Yeah, I can't answer that. I'm sorry. I could look into that and get back to you, but I can't answer that. I would say, like I said before, I mean, I do think, you know, CMP and Unitil, because they're large and do have, you know, fairly sophisticated billing and metering systems, I would think the integration with those two utilities would likely be easier. But again, until you get into the weeds, and you really do here, you have to get into the details of how those interfaces would exactly work, what data you're grabbing, how you're going to present it to the consumer or city, or as Representative Kessler's aware, you know, South Portland and Portland are interested in, you know, neighborhood data and city data for their, you know, for the metrics and on sustainability and climate change that they're working on. So that's a fair amount of work. And I guess I would just add that New York is spending most of their time right now on getting into those weeds, you know, exactly what are the use cases, and, you know, the technology world, that's what you have to get. Tell me the exact use case you want, and exactly what data you want, and exactly how you want it to be displayed and calculated, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where these sit in. That's why I think in the RFI responses, you saw the huge ranges from some of these vendors, because they just didn't dare do anything definitive. You know, 500,000 to 2 million is a huge range, obviously. So I think without knowing how those interfaces work, they just didn't dare be more definitive. So.
Thank you. And I think that's exactly the reason that the SEED program was developed by the federal government, because it does have a programming interface which allows, you know, it's essentially open source. It allows multiple parties to keep track of edits and activities and contribute and share in different ways. So I think that's a very important resource. I'll go next to Representative Kessler. I think you had an additional question.
Yes, thank you. So I just keep thinking about the grid modernization docket open at the PUC, and you know how I still just don't have an understanding of how like real-time data is being looked at by our utilities, like how they view where the constraints in the system are, and how this particular topic can help tie into that docket. Would you be able to just share your thoughts on how you think they could jive? And yeah, that's basically the question. Is there synergy there, and what does that look like?
Excellent question, Representative. I would say they are, for the most part, distinct efforts. You know, the grid modernization, I think is less about billing and metering and energy consumption data than it is about making sure the grid works smart, and we understand the technologies that are, you know, coming forward and how to leverage those to, you know, create synergies and efficiencies for, you know, ratepayers and utilities. But I would say they're two fairly separate. Again, I'm not an expert on either, so but that would be my take on that question.
Great. Other questions or discussion? Okay, well, thank you very much, Director Lanfear, for this report. And I guess I do have one additional question, which is, can you speak to, and this may be directly related and I may have missed it, or it might be a separate issue, but can you speak to how the utilities are currently, and we'll just take CMP for the sake of argument, where they're at with respect to database capacity for system planning and operations generally?
Can you define what you mean by database capacity?
I think just having access for regulators in particular to data that helps to look in real time at their system planning and operations, both short and long term.
Yeah, I cannot speak to that. I'm sorry.
Got it. Maybe we can have you back another time so we can delve into that topic.
Yeah, and there might be somebody internally here that could answer that question much better than I can. Yeah, in conjunction with the RFI, we were really looking at, billing and metering data versus other metrics, I think.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, seeing no other questions, Director Lanfear, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you got your own computer working again, and take care.
That would be fantastic. And you have to know that I had a really nice tie on today, and I looked good. But you just have to trust me on that one.
Well, we'll have you back so you can wear it again.
There you go. Thank you.
All right.
And happy to answer any follow-ups if you have any.
Thank you very much. And before we go on to Mr. Stoddard, I guess I do want to just ask the committee if there is anything you want to make sure that we follow up on. We can ask our committee analysts to make a note and get back to us with that. Okay. Well, let her know, or you can always reach out to the BUC directly and share what you learn. With that, I will promote to panelist our next victim, Director Michael Stoddard of the Efficiency Maine Trust, and he is here to speak to us about the new Ag Fair Assistance Program. Welcome, Director Stoddard.
Good morning, everybody. Chairman Barry, Chairman Lawrence, members of the committee. My name is Michael Stoddard. I am the Executive Director of the Efficiency Maine Trust, and pleased to be seeing you again today and having a chance to catch you up on the report we submitted in the middle of January about the Agricultural Fair Assistance Program. I'm going to try and share just a couple of slides to help us walk us through, and if I fail at that, I'll just go without, but I think I can make this work. Let's see how this works. Are you seeing that on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Are you seeing the title page, Agricultural Fair Assistance Program?
We are. Looks great.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's see how this works. I now have many things up on my screen that I wasn't quite counting on. Bear with me for 1 second. Things moved around a little on me. Okay. Oops, there we go. So in 2019, your committee reviewed and approved legislation in LD 1186 to establish the Agricultural Fair Assistance Program at the Trust. And the issue at hand that was presented to you was that ag fairs in Maine, as we all know, usually are only open for about 1 week a year, maybe a little longer, maybe a little bit less. But the issue is that because they're commercial customers, their electricity bill includes a component called a demand charge, which your committee has talked about on multiple occasions. But the demand charges set a piece of their bill and the rates that they will pay for the remaining 12 months, even though they're mostly closed or operating at very low levels in the remaining months of the year. And that's resulting in a fairly sizable electricity bill, which has proved onerous for some of these ag fairs to pay. So the question was, could there be something that Efficiency Maine could do to help them lower their electricity bills through any kind of interventions? And that's what we looked at. So the bill itself directed three basic tasks. One was for us at the Efficiency Maine Trust to work with the ag fairs to try to see what interventions might work. The second was to establish some funding to help pay for whatever those interventions might be. And the third was to direct the commission to look into whether there would be a rate design solution that could help those customers, and that would be consistent with their other rules and principles. The PUC got their work done first. They did have a proceeding and reviewed it, and their conclusion was that there was not a rate-based solution that they were prepared to recommend, and their rationale was that it would require a cross subsidy from other ratepayers to pay for that. And so I think what they were saying was that the rates for the demand charges that the ag fairs were currently subjected to did fairly reflect the costs that they impose on the grid. So you could change the rates, but you would end up having to cross subsidize that from other customers. I don't know that this committee really needs a refresher on what demand charges are, but for maybe for folks in the audience who are not familiar, the grid is obligated to keep up with demand on the system, and it has to build up the system to sufficient size and capacity to meet that demand. And the costs for doing so are allocated across all of the customers based on what the estimates are of how much those each customer contributes to those costs. And demand charges are a classic way of a piece of the rates that utilities charge to account for that. In the case of ag fairs, we looked at their usage, we looked at their electric bills, we surveyed all 25 of the agricultural fairs in the state, and their demand charge, the way they experience demand charge is very similar to all other customers. They are located in different parts of the state, and so they're subjected to different utilities demand charge rates depending on where they're located. But what we found was that their demand charges ranged from $6.39 per kilowatt per month to $21.04 per kilowatt. Not per month, I strike that, but per kilowatt. So what happens is that the meter is reading what the maximum usage is in 15-minute intervals throughout the course of the month, and wherever that highest usage is at any given moment for 15 minutes, that is the demand charge. That is the kW capacity requirement that that sets their demand charge. So if they used 100 kW at any one moment, then their monthly bill would be 100 kW times whatever this demand charge rate is, depending on which utility district they're in and which tariff they're on.
Director Stoddard,
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, going back a slide, can you remind us for a residential customer what order of magnitude the demand charge might fall into?
There isn't one. it's all volumetric for residential customers. So it's just based on the total quantity of kilowatt hours you consume.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So quickly, the program activity involved several steps. First, we and I need to note this has been a somewhat challenged initiative for us because we launched it right as COVID started, and then all the ag fairs were canceled, and so everything was sort of discombobulated. We were able to do a lot of good work looking at their electricity bills and reviewing all of that, and that was helpful. But what we really wanted to see was to see the fairs in action so that we could try to identify in what is on the ground contributing to the demand of these fairs. And we finally were able to do that, but we lost more than a year. We sort of lost 1.5 cycles of ag fairs in order to get that done. But we found, well, for anyone who's been to a fair, if you squint your eyes and try to think back to what you did when you walked around the fairgrounds, you'll remember the things that you see there. Lots of lights, lots of fans that are blowing, maybe in barns or in stock pens. There's all the stuff at the midway, and then there's all the food preparation, kitchens and stalls. And so there's a fair amount of compressed air, a lot of lighting, a fair amount of HVAC. So we were able to finally do that in-person field work last year. We coupled that with the research we had been able to do by looking at the bills, and then also some survey results that we got from about, I think, 14 out of the 25 fairs responded to our surveys. And we looked at the two most likely interventions we could think of. One was energy efficiency measures, so lighting, ventilation, cooling, and what we know about the costs to install those kinds of interventions and what we know about the amount of savings that could be achieved. And the thing that we're really concerned about there is that because the fairs don't run very long, they're just a week or two usually, we're concerned that when we do make interventions, they may not achieve a lot of savings. They'll achieve the savings that they get for that week or two, but in most cases, we're thinking about a customer that's going to be operating 52 weeks out of a year. And so if those lights are more efficient for all of those 52 weeks of operation, that's quite a big savings. If you only operate those lights for 1 week, you're not going to get as much savings. The other thing that we looked at was distributed generation, and we had sort of high hopes that we might be able to come up with a way to purchase either a whole bunch of small distributed generation or possibly one big piece of distributed generation that we could maybe carry around like a circuit ride or drive around on the back of a flatbed and set up. And I should note that for most of these fairs, the midway, the amusement stuff, which uses a lot of electricity, is not on the meter of a lot of those fairs. A lot of the arrangements are that those folks bring their own generators, which is why when you think about it, there's always quite a racket going on in the background as those generators are running. And that's because it's sort of BYO, a generator. So that's not really what's contributing most to this issue that the fairs are experiencing. But they still could be candidates to use generators themselves. The issue we bumped into there is that to make it, if it's not going to be a generator that's big enough to run the entirety of their load, which seems like, which we calculated would be cost prohibitive, then you would need to be running a generator in parallel with the grid. And if you're running parallel with the grid, you need interconnection. You need an interconnection designed in a way that they're not currently designed at any of these fairs. And the cost that we estimated to bring that up to speed so that you could do that was times 25 different fairs was totally cost prohibitive. So we were a little discouraged that it didn't seem like that was going to be a viable solution. So what are we going to do? What we're planning to do, actually right now, we are in the process of launching what we call a funding opportunity notice. So that is a targeted, specially marketed opportunity just for certain classes of customers. And in this case, it'll be just for the 25 agricultural fairs. And we're going to go back out to them with enhanced rebates and encourage them to take advantage of these for lighting and HVAC systems and some kinds of agricultural equipment and air compressors that we know they typically use. And we'll work closely with them over the remainder of these winter and spring months and try to get as many of these installed as we can before the fair season starts. And then we'll see what happens. We'll go back out and measure what their usage was, their demand in particular, and we'll look at their electricity bills, and we'll see how that performs, and we'll see what we see, and then we will be reporting back to you. So we'll immediately, not immediately, but the first opportunity to report back to you will be in an annual report that we do on all our program activities, but we will have a section just on what we're experiencing at the agricultural fairs. And then we have another report back to you due in January of 2024. So by that time, we would know, I think, definitively what the effectiveness is of these interventions. So that's where we stand. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Stoddard. And questions from the committee? Representative Kessler.
Thank you. And good morning, Michael. Thank you for the great summary. I was really hoping for that romanticized traveling battery idea powered by methane from cow poop. That was what I was hoping for from this report. But could you
Big
speak?
dreams. You have big dreams, Representative.
That would have been awesome. The traveling battery, you know. I was wondering, so could you speak to that particular item again, though? You were saying a generator in parallel to the grid. And so can you speak again exactly to like the analysis of like the large scale battery?
Yeah, so we looked at two options. There may be others, and we will keep looking, but the first thing we looked at was doing a 200 kW generator and placing one at each fair potentially. And for the cost of that up front is at least $10,000 and maybe tens of thousands of dollars just for the piece of equipment. And then you have permitting and installation. And then the thing that really kind of threw us was the interconnection costs, which we have, by the way, we have experienced this on some of the combined heat and power projects we've done with maybe a couple of hospitals in Maine and some other locations. And these interconnection costs can go over $100,000 for a single site to enable that generator to operate in parallel with the grid. It's sort of eye-watering. You don't expect it, and then it turns out to be more expensive than the generator itself. And so while that's frustrating, it is what it is. And if we tried to multiply that times 25 fair locations, it's way more than any of the funding that is either in this bucket or what the fairs would be able to come up with themselves. The other option that we looked at was, as I said, purchasing a large generator, like a megawatt in size that you could then truck around. Then you wouldn't have to operate in parallel with the grid. You could just run the whole place off of that. But those are in the neighborhood of $350,000 and another $50,000 for the trailer. And you still would have to do some reconfiguring and electrical work at each of the fairgrounds to be able to handle that, to be able to hook it in. And the estimates of that cost were over $500,000 additional. So you're up over $1 million at that point. So it just didn't seem practical, regrettably. Now, maybe there's elements of those cost estimates that will come down due to some changes in pricing or changes in technology. And if that were true, I think we could totally revisit it. But that was our initial analysis.
Representative Kessler, any follow-up? Okay, we'll go to Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Stoddard, for your work here and for your explanation of where you're at. Obviously a daunting task, especially when we look at how the current rate schedule affects this whole situation compared to what might be done to reduce costs for the agricultural affairs committees and so on. And obviously when we looked at this bill originally, there was a lot of discussion in that area, and we were wondering, what the best fix was. The committee chose this road to go down to try to help out some. My question is, and except for possibly trying to figure out how many cows Representative Kessler's method might have required to be moved in to supply that much energy over a short period of time, I won't go there, but being from South Portland and a smidgen of Cape Elizabeth, I understand he might not have a full view of what that might take. But that aside, my real concern is, what you've indicated is at most Efficiency Maine may be able to make a modest improvement for these folks to reduce that cost during the time that they are using the electricity. I'm wondering, and the last thing I think I want anyway is for them to say, we went through all of this and you didn't help us out hardly at all. But I'm wondering what kind of feedback, if Efficiency Maine has had interaction with some of these committees during your work, during this process, what kind of feedback you're getting from them on, are they receptive of trying to move forward with this, or are they looking at it like it's just not enough to bother with, or what else?
Yeah. Well, Representative, I think it's a little too soon to say. They were very receptive in working with us to analyze the nature and the magnitude of the challenges, but I don't know how they're going to react to the recommendations we have about next steps. So I think we're about to find out the answer to that question in the next couple of months. I think we have enough money in the pot here to make it very attractive to them. I think that we will be able to significantly provide very significant incentives. So hopefully they view this as a good deal. They should, but I can't speculate right now as to what their reaction is. If their interactions with us during the analysis portion of this is any indication, I think it'll be, I'm expecting good participation, and they've been very pleasant, very collaborative, and their trade association has been great to work with as well. So we have a nice channel of communications with them, but I guess the proof will be in the pudding.
If I may follow with that. Well, thank you for that response, Mr. Stoddard. I guess the only other question I would have is, obviously, again, looking at what modest help we might be able to offer through Efficiency Maine, I'm guessing that at some point, either they or Efficiency Maine will look at it and say, well, this just isn't going to be something that's going to help much. And either during this process up till now or going forward, I would hope that Efficiency Maine might, working with them, maybe offer this committee if this doesn't work out well, what opportunities there might be in the future to address this issue. It's still obviously, when you mentioned the costs that are involved, especially for some of these smaller fairs. I know one or two in my area that only operate 2 or 3 days. And when we look at what the significant cost is versus what they've got coming in, is there any hope or not, I guess is what I'm getting at, and what other options there might be. And I'm not asking that you have those now, but I'm just saying that's one thing before we leave all this and leave them where they pretty much are already, that's something that certainly this work might develop some ideas for the future, if you will, to help them out. Thank you.
Yes, happy to do it.
Representative Grahowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Stoddard, for being here and your attention to helping our fairs cut down their energy costs. Definitely an interesting study. What I'm curious about is, it seems like there are other places or events in Maine that suffer, I'm sure, from a similar demand profile. Thinking of like music festivals, concert venues, things like that. I'm just wondering, off the top of your head, if you feel like there's a benefit to sharing what you've learned through this process with other people with similar demand uses, or if it's just not, you've not turned up enough to make it really worth the Efficiency Maine's time to do outreach to those types of entities.
Well, again, it's a little speculative at this point, so we'll see what the results are, but it's the opinion of our team that these are not going to be, these interventions are not going to meet our traditional cost effectiveness test, because the equipment that runs for those few days is not going to run for enough hours to achieve enough savings over the life of that product to make back the cost to the customer and to us. Now, in this case, the legislature mandated a certain amount of funding go to this purpose. So you made up your mind and you said, go do it. And so we'll invest the funds in a way that makes it affordable for these fairs to make these interventions. But it's a departure from the normal standard of what we would use of when and where to apply these publicly directed funds to achieve energy efficiency. I think there have long been specific customer groups that have had similar experiences that have had this issue where they only run for a brief period of the year, and the demand charges seem, they appear outsized given the duration of time that the operation runs, and yet it also, I think, has been, again, I'm not an expert in rates or rate design, and I really think the commission is the appropriate venue for those discussions. But judging by what they said in this case, I think, having looked at it and being sympathetic to the concerns that were raised by your committee and have been raised by stakeholders on other cases, in a music venue would be another good example, a summer concert or something like that could be another example. And I think there are other cases where they said, this is the cost that is incurred by the grid to make sure that it's available to supply what you need. So if it's going to be worth it, you're going to have to charge your customers to compensate for that and cover that cost. And then in the case of a music festival or something, if you have 10,000 or 50,000 customers, that's viable. You can recover that cost by through the entrance fee. And I think that's what most people have found a way to do.
Thank you, Mr. Stoddard. And it's my understanding that pursuant to the statute, you will report to this committee in a similar fashion 2 years from now. and then it sunsets in June of 2024. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Got it. And
you'll get a sneak peek, if I might, because we'll also be reporting in our annual reports in December of each year. So you'll see both things.
Excellent, thank you. Can you see, given where technology appears to be going, a possible future where some of this challenge is addressed by the ability to store and then provide electricity through vehicles? So for example, the Ford F-150 Lightning, you know, which they claim can power your house for 3 days. The possibility of school buses, which are electric and aren't really used in the summer when the bulk of this activity is happening, being deployed, and, you know, to power parts of the fairs or summer concerts or what have you, and then to charge up during the wee hours when there's less activity. I mean, is that could that be helpful as the technology and as electric vehicles become as the technology matures, I should say, and as EVs become more widespread?
Yeah, I'd want to think about it. I think the answer is maybe. You know, those batteries are pretty. The first thing you need to know is that you need to have enough of them to last. So the issue with batteries is duration, because the fair is going to run, you know, from whenever everyone shows up at noon until midnight or whenever they close down. Well, batteries do a great job for more abbreviated periods, but they struggle more when you have a more extended period. If you're talking about batteries or some kind of energy storage like that. So that would be the challenge. I think, you know, it would be technically possible. You also need to recognize that batteries also are not, they're effectively the same as generation when they're behind the meter. So you'd still have, I think, some of these unpleasant costs of upgrading the interconnection and the wiring and the switching at the site. So that would be kind of costly. So I think it's possible because some of the batteries on those vehicles, I mean, the batteries on a typical car right now are, you know, 60 to 90 kWh. So they carry a pretty good load, but it's a little hard to imagine how many you'd have to string together to provide enough to run what you're thinking of.
And just as a follow-up to that, going back to the way that demand charges are applied for ag fairs and for commercial customers and industrial customers generally, is it not the case that a slight shaving of the peak demand at a given event could have a fairly large impact on the amount paid per kilowatt?
Well, it would be valuable. Every kW that you could shave would be quite valuable. The challenge, though, I think, is that, you know, in a lot of cases where people are talking about shaving peak demand for economic benefit, they're showing you a graph that's what they call spiky. It's very spiky, right? So it's kind of level, and then all for a brief period, it goes way up and way down. And you know that if you could just ride through that spike, and if you could shave that down, the rest of the time you'd be in really good shape. And what I don't know, because I don't have the load profiles in front of me, but my hunch is that these ag fairs are spiking the whole time because they got everything running, you know, nonstop during that period. So I'm not sure that it's going to be as peaky as the kind of load you might see, the load profile you might see like in a factory or a hotel, when a whole bunch of things start up all at once and then they kind of come back down to level. So I'm not sure, but I'm a little skeptical that that's going to be it's true that every bit that you can shave off is going to be valuable to you, but I don't think you're going to get a big change.
Great. Well, hopefully we'll arrive at a future where we can see our spiky graphs in real time as customers. Representative Kessler.
Thank you. Was there somewhere in the report where it showed what the peak demand was for like the largest fair?
The largest was, we didn't put it in there, but the largest was 800 kW. The next largest was 400. And then most of the rest of them were between 50 and 200.
Okay.
And there were a few that had no demand charges at all.
Okay. All right. So 800 kW. So that ends up being about 2.7 million BTUs, which ends up being about 1.5 tons of cow poop. So I'm I'm all about this here. Representative Foster, I hope you want to work with me on this solution in the future.
I hear there are cows in Exeter. Representative Foster, any comments?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. In my district, we have a pilot plant. I don't know if I can get them to truck some of that over to help out. It certainly is further along in the digestive process than what will be available on fair day. Thank you.
Well, on that note, Director Stoddard, we appreciate your coming and giving us this update. And as every politician does, we'll try to make hay from this.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. That concludes our work for today. Unless, Lindsay, do you have any business for us to attend to? Language reviews or what have you?
Nothing with language review. The only thing I wanted to remind the committee of, if you are interested in hearing about the solar array siting report from the Department of Agriculture, Conservation and Forestry, you can join the ACF committee at noon. I'll resend the invitation by email once we wrap up. But if you're interested, you're welcome to sit in on that.
Thank you. I do intend to be there myself, and I hope other members of the committee can make it as well. Senator Lawrence, anything else from you?
After the discussion we just had, I have nothing.
Speechless. Okay. That's impressive.
I was going to suggest the fairs just plug into the wild currant bushes, but I thought that was going a little bit too far.
I'm glad you didn't bring that up, Senator. Just kidding. Okay, well, on that note, good to see everyone, and we get the rest of the morning off. We'll see you all, or those that can join at noon, and many of you on Thursday in person. No business, no committee meetings on Thursday. Just a reminder about that. We'll see you back on Zoom next Tuesday. Take care. Meeting adjourned.